All right, here we are again. Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to another episode of Sales Pipeline Radio. I am your host, Matt Hines. Super excited to have you all here for another Thursday. We've got a great guest and a great topic today. We're going to be talking about the author of this brand new book, Focused, a leadership discipline for sales managers under pressure. And so that is 100% of sales managers, Stephen.
Yes,
So
it
we're
is,
literally
Matt.
addressing everybody
They're
with this book.
constantly under pressure.
I want to meet the sales manager who is not under pressure because I think we need to capture it. We need to study it and find out why that is
I'll
true.
tell you where to go.
Yeah.
Friday on the golf course, you may find a few there.
Yeah.
Although, if they still have their phones, they're still under pressure.
They're still under, well, then they're under pressure no matter what. But we're going to get to that here in a minute. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you are joining us live, we are streaming live on LinkedIn and YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us and making this part of your work day and work week. If you have a comment on something that you see and hear today, throw that in. And for those of you live, we'll be able to see it. We can respond to it. We can put it up on screen and we'll have some fun with that. If you are watching or listening on demand, thank you so much for subscribing and downloading. Over 250,000 sales and marketing professionals have been listening to Sales Pipeline Radio. I just really appreciate everyone who's joining us on a regular basis. Every episode of Sales Pipeline Radio, this one, the next one, all hundreds of episodes in the past available at salespipelineradio.com. Very excited to have today our guest, Stephen Rosen, the founder of Star Results, sales influencer, sales coach to the stars, author of numerous books, including this new book, Focus. Stephen, thanks so much for joining us today.
Matt, I'm so pumped to be here and chatting with you. This makes my week.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate being able to get a couple minutes with you to be able to talk to people about this book. Cause I've enjoyed reading what you write and learning from you over the years. For those of you who don't know who you are, give us a quick intro to Stephen Rosen.
Okay. Oh my God, I haven't done this in like 2 days. No, I'm just joking. Well, I come from sales. I'm a sales guy through and true. Spent 15 years in sales leadership. Well, started as a sales rep and went through all the leadership roles. Was VP of sales of 2 companies, and I believe had tremendous results. I had some great teams. And for the last 23 years, I've run my own business called Star Results. And we have evolved Star Results over time, from sales training to sales leadership to now my new era or new thing I'm focusing on is sales leadership infrastructure, which is, I think, a new concept. Others may disagree, but I've really spent some time thinking about why things don't work in sales.
Awesome. Well, I can't remember when I first came across you. It might have been 2012. I don't know if it was your first book. It was the first book I saw of you. It was 52 Sales Management Tips, the Sales Manager's Success Guide. You also have the Sales Leadership Awakening podcast. And so if you want to learn more from Stephen, look him up, look up Star Results. You're going to find a ton of different formats for how he's just helping sales professionals, sales leaders, sales managers overall. I've heard you say this before, and I think this is central to the concept behind Focused. It's that execution doesn't break suddenly, it drifts.
You got it.
What does that mean, and why is that central to this book?
Well, here's the thing. When something breaks, it breaks, and you know it breaks. So if you think of every quarter, the company's working hard, the salespeople are trying to close up deals, and then what happens is maybe you miss on a quarter. Well, that goes back. The only time we realize that we've missed is when we hit the time.
Yeah.
But it's a slow process where sales managers don't coach their reps. They don't reinforce training. They're not following up on execution. Standards when pressure starts to build. Now, pressure, as we said, is always there, but at the end of a quarter, it starts to build. And we drop our standards. Okay, let's see if we can sneak this deal in. And basically, it's a slow process. It's like a leak. It's like having a slow leak in your basement. You don't even notice it until it becomes a big leak or until you walk into some water.
Right.
So the fact is, sometimes we don't even know what's going on, even though we think things are great.
So as I read through this book, it's not meant to be kind of like I guess I would say sort of it's more of a field guide, I guess is the way I would kind of describe this, right?
I call it an operating manual.
I saw someone describe it as quote unquote like a punch in the face.
Ah,
And so there's that as well, which, sometimes we need to sort of get us back on course. But I think I found there was 3 areas really critical in this book that I wanted to make sure we touch on:
okay.
coaching, inspection, and enforcement of standards.
You
Um,
got it. Those are
let's
three.
talk about all 3 of those, starting with coaching.
Okay.
And I learned from one of the best sales managers I've ever worked with, because I mean, as a marketer, right? I'm on the marketing side. There's
I
a
get
big
it. You're on the dark side, but
okay, we can go there if you want to.
play on the exciting side too.
Yeah. So yeah, that might be another episode. We got to get into that part. But
I'm teasing
I
you.
learned from her that there's a difference between a manager and a coach. And too many sales managers spend most of their time in management land and not enough time coaching. I'd love to have you talk about how managers become a multiplier of success when they adopt better coaching principles.
Well, it's very interesting. The role of the sales rep is to sell,
Mhm.
right? Work with customers. The role of the manager is not to sell. It's
Right.
not to hit quota, even
Right.
though those are important things. It's to develop their people to be better.
Mhm.
Also hiring good people, but the most important thing they can do and the biggest impact they have on performance of their team is developing their people to get better. It doesn't happen through training. Training may provide some data, but if it's not reinforced, it dies. But we'll get to reinforcement.
Yeah.
The manager's role, the main activity they do that drives performance is coaching. And everyone would agree with that because every single study that comes out says that. But there's a problem. It's how do you define coaching, right? And many SaaS, I won't pick on SaaS companies. Yes, I will. SaaS-based companies, because they've grown so quickly, what they think is coaching, and it drives me nutso, is coaching the deal. Let's sit
Mm.
down and coach the deal.
Mm.
And I say, okay, to me, that's performance management. Others may disagree, but coaching is developing the skills to close the deal, to get the deal, to do good discovery, to do good prospecting. That is where coaching comes in. And coaching can happen where I am right now, sitting behind the desk. The only way in my old days when I used to be a manager, and I wasn't the greatest coach, but I was out in the field observing. And that's what, to me, what really good coaching is. I've been watching a lot of hockey games. I'm Canadian, so I like hockey. But you don't notice the coach sitting in the dressing room except in periods. During the game, they're standing on the bench or behind the bench, and that's what coaching really is. I don't know if
I
I've
love it.
answered your question, but to me, that's what I'm passionate about.
No,
Is
I,
getting
I
getting
appreciate
out
I
there.
appreciate that answer. We're gonna move quickly here because we don't have a
Okay.
ton of time, but excited to have here on Seals Pipeline Radio today, Stephen Rosen. He is the founder of Star Results and the author of this new book, Focused, really a manual for sales managers under pressure. So we talked a little bit about coaching. I want to move to inspection. And you say that a lot of times when people sit down and do one-on-ones, we just kind of say, "Well, how's it going?" Right? And so we sort of leave it open to the rep to say whatever they want to do. And you call that failure mode. When you talk about inspection best practices for sales managers, what does that include?
It's clearly follow-up. It's inspecting what you've agreed to happen. So if we look at execution, companies spend a lot of time building execution plans. I think even
Mhm.
marketing helps along with the execution plans or POAs, we used to call them in the pharmaceutical industry.
Mhm.
Uh, if you're not sitting down to look at stuff and actually going deeper, it drifts as well.
Yeah.
Execution drifts. An inspection, is not coaching. It's getting into, it's kind of the management part. It's the nitty gritty details that you can't accept superficial answers when you're inspecting a deal and you say, who are the deal makers? Or how come they haven't sat down with you? In many cases, the rep will just kind of give you a quick answer, but not necessarily the truest answer,
Mhm.
or they haven't really thought about that. So the manager's job is not to get the deal, it's to inspect what the rep is doing. Are they following through? And I don't consider it micromanagement because some people think, oh my God, Steven's saying we should be
Right.
micromanagers, right? But periodic planned inspection. My good buddy Mike Weinberg does his accountability meetings.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a standard for me that I do it every month, or I teach my clients to do it every month, is sit down and review what you agreed to last month, what your results are, what activities you plan, and are you on track? That holds people accountable.
Accountability is key. I think
Yeah.
inspection is good. Is there a line between inspection and interrogation that you want to sort of maintain? Where do you balance?
So part of it is when I do inspection, I ask a lot of managers, are your sales reps high paid professionals? And everyone says yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say, or are they burger flippers?
Right.
Nothing wrong. I was a burger flipper once upon a time in my life, and I was lousy at it, to be honest with you. But so I once served someone a raw hamburger at Wendy's, and they came back to the window. But the bottom line is, uh, it is very critical for managers to inspect. My expectation is when you have a accountability meeting, is the rep is responsible to come prepared. So you're not interrogating them. Their job is to tell you what's going on, what's working, what's not working, and what they're doing about it. So it's not the manager say, why hasn't this been done?
Right.
My expectation is the rep comes, and I know when I used to go see my boss, if things weren't happening, I come and say, okay, we're missing here, but this is what I'm doing about it.
Yeah.
The difference in philosophy.
I think it's important, and I'd encourage folks to sort of read. There's more examples of how to do that and some talk tracks in the book as well to sort of get into sort of more accountable inspection mode. So we talked about coaching, we talked about inspection. Let's talk about enforcement of standards. So if we premise that this book is for managers under pressure, what that makes me think of is like the famous, one of the poet laureates of our time, Mike Tyson, once said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And when you get punched in the mouth, sometimes when you get under pressure, you kind of go into sort of like fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
And you just start like, sometimes you throw out the playbook, which is the playbook is for those times, not for throwing it out. Talk about the importance of standards and keeping focused on the process, even under pressure.
Okay. So I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball here.
Okay.
So to me, enforcement is the missing link. Okay. And people are going to say, isn't enforcement, isn't it mean? Isn't it bad? But the problem is things break down. And when I talk about enforcement, and I know you've mentioned the book is for managers, the curveball is it's not really for managers. The book is for the second line leadership who is doing a lousy job on enforcement.
Yep.
And that's where the system breaks down. The CRO probably looks at what are the key standards. I talk about it in chapter 5. What are the 3 things? So the 3 things are the 3 things, and that's what you focus on. But where things break down on the enforcement level is not the frontline manager. It's the middle, where the second line managers don't really know what they're supposed to be doing. And they're supposed to be enforcing standards, even when pressure is on. So it doesn't mean calling the rep and saying what's happening or the manager, what's happening with the Acme deal. The difference in the conversation is, how are you developing Stephen? How many days have you spent in the field?
Right.
The conversation changes because you're enforcing coaching. If you're enforcing execution, how is it going with our execution plan? Who's having challenges? What are you doing about it? And the enforcement component, because Matt, I've spent 20 odd years coaching, teaching managers how to coach. So first I'm just going to, you tell me how we're doing for time. But
we're good.
Okay, we're good. So, first I would, do an assessment. How are you as a coach, get feedback from the sales reps. Then I teach coaching, and I'd go away. And after, 6 months, the coaching program wasn't being used. Then I said, okay, I'm not doing training without coaching, meaning I would coach the managers for 3 or 6 months as part of a program. And that worked pretty good. And then it would tail off. Where I had my epiphany after 23 years, I'm a late bloomer, where I had my epiphany is one senior director got up and said, whatever we learned over the last 2 days, we're going to implement. And the manager said, we love it. Guess what? We just don't have time. How are we going to fit all this stuff into our, we're already busy.
Right.
Right. Because that's part of the issue that I talk about. Managers are set up to fail because they're busy. So what we did is we set up a task force of getting rid of low value activities so they can do the high value activities. And this leader, who I love, enforced the system. And that is the missing step, because I've seen great results in organizations that have included enforcement. And that's where the book comes from. I've talked about focus, believe it or not. If you go back to my blog, my first articles were about focus, a different shade on focus. But what the key is here, the missing piece that organizations forget is the enforcement component. So I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't send you a list of questions.
You did not.
That is the crux of the book. And it's not, managers will learn a lot from focused.
Yeah.
But it's the second line who get punched in the face. That's
yeah. And there's a level of sort of self-accountability that I pulled from this as well, right? Like it's your sales managers keeping people accountable, but also like, I mean, you cited like 60% of new sales managers fail in the first 18 months. 80% of sales leaders admit to feeling out of control or drowning. And, you know, you can feel that way in any job, in any context, but to be able to you're the first person that has to be focused. You're the first person that has to stay disciplined, stay accountable, to stick to the standards. Not only because you set an example, but because you need that for yourself to carve out the time and the space to do the coaching, to do the work you need to do to make your team successful.
You're right, Matt. Here's the problem. Sometimes the problem is senior management.
Yeah.
Sometimes the problem is your reps.
Right.
Because managers think they equate, and I talk about this in the book, they equate busyness with leadership.
Right.
They're not the same.
Right.
You know, clearly they're not the same. But how many managers, you said 80 or 90% are overwhelmed. It's because they don't know how to say no. So their boss sends them a Slack. I don't even know what Slack is. I never used it. But they send them a Slack or a text message.
Yeah.
You know, I'm only one man in my organization, plus I guess some support. They send them a note. Immediately, they drop everything they're doing to respond to their boss, right? Because the boss wants to know what's happening with the Rosen deal. My answer is say, hey, VP, I will get back to you at our Friday meeting. Many managers can't say that. They think it's urgent.
Yeah.
So they replace what's important with what's urgent.
Yeah. Well, we are now running out of time, and so we're gonna have to wrap this up a little bit. But Stephen, this is just a peek of the kind of insight you can get from following Stephen at Star Results. Check out his podcast, The Sales Leadership Awakening. Run, do not walk, and get yourself a copy of Focus. It's a fast read. It's an easy read. It's the kind of thing you can sort of go back and forth to. I imagine there are sales managers that have this highlighted and dog-eared and sort of highlights sticking up to sort of, it's the kind of thing that you can use as a pillar to remind yourself of the things that are important and go back to again and again.
And what I tell sales managers is tell your boss to read it.
Absolutely.
so they don't forget, you know, what you need to be doing, because they're probably pushing you in the wrong direction. What I talk about is managers are great. The system is what causes the problems.
Yeah. Awesome. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been awesome. Give me a couple URLs. Where do people go to learn more about you and the book?
My website is www.starresults.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. Focus is available on Amazon. And if you're a leader of a large team and you're looking to purchase bulk, just come to my website, and there's a tab called Book, which has all the information on the book and an opportunity. If you want to implement it through your organization, we offer some very good value-added operating components to help leaders implement the system.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Stephen, for making time. I know you're busy, for being here and sharing a little bit about what's in the book. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today, whether you were live or on demand. Appreciate you making the time. We'll be here next week for another episode of Sales Pipeline Radio. Until then, thanks so much for being here, and have a good rest of your week.